South East Cornwall Multi-Academy Regional Trust is the schools of South East Cornwall. That's what we're coming together in a collaborative mat, and that's where we are. And SMART really is the whole of education. So we are preschool. We've got 4 centres of preschool, primary schools, secondary schools, and 6th form colleges. We cover the entire range, and obviously we're about learning. So learning doesn't stop then. Obviously we're adult learning teachers. All of us are learners, because we can't be a teacher going to school and say learning was so good we stopped doing it. It doesn't really work. So we've got to be educated all the time as well, and certainly you'll see how that happens as I go through the presentation. Now, I don't know whether you've been on this circuit for a while, but you probably somewhere during this week will come across this old analogy, which I really hate. So it's talking about, the idea goes that you go into a surgery, and this was what it looked like in the Victorian times, and this is what it looks like now, and look how technology has massively impacted in that space. You go into shops and look how they're different, and but the classroom, 30 children in rows, children complying with rules, everything. Oh look, it's not changed. I think that analogy doesn't make any sense to me, because actually it's talking about buildings and setups, and it's the reason why we teach them in 30s is because buildings are made that way, and actually that's the way it's designed. It's not really the argument we should be thinking of, because I think if you ask different questions, the classroom of today is enormously different from that of Victoria. I mean, the fact that the students are here as experts is evidence of that. We had the seen and not heard view of Victorian times, where you had empty vessels and we filled them with the knowledge that us adults had, which now we know is garbage. So now we know that actually not only is learning a partnership and learning about trying to learn from the students. I think there's one of the youngest presenters of the TED Talks said that I don't want to be educated by somebody who doesn't firmly believe that I could be better than them, because otherwise that's not progress, is it? So we've got to firmly believe that actually we're learning, and actually technology is one of those areas that we're happy to. A teacher might be a bit uncomfortable about getting advice on history if it's their subject from a student, but actually it's okay, they hand over the remote straight away. So ICT kind of opens this opening where we can flip that relationship and start talking about the experts that we need to. Also, we've got to think that if we ask anybody, and I'll ask you in a second, what's school really for? Actually, we start coming up with different answers than we've had before. So the purpose of school has changed, and that means the classroom has changed. So if you look at it from this perspective, the revolution is already happening. Personalisation is providing that promise, but actually you've got to look deeper. You've got to look at how technology is doing that. And if you think about the fact that all of these children have posted on the website today at the school, and they are on the phones the entire time, and being able to, 2 of them we were talking to and realised they were playing a game with each other over the side of a train. We're kind of slowly catching up with this, but actually to think that relationship hasn't changed it's just missing the trick. Actually, it's getting us thinking about how we empower the old model. It's us that's got the problem of that Victorian issue. So looking at where should we be going then, and why do we get this feeling that technology hasn't delivered? And I think the answer to that is to look at, well, what is personalisation? What are we actually trying to do? And if we are trying to provide these children with a group of facts that we decide are important, that when they leave school, aren't they brilliant because they've learnt them? They may be entirely useless to them after school, but actually it's brilliant, they've learnt it. Or are we trying to get lifelong learners that actually can cope with a world that is changing rapidly underneath them? So how do we get students who are skilled in that process? Does it really matter what the content is? I don't know. I mean, if you can Google it, do you really need to learn it? That's a question, that's a debate. We don't want to go there. But I think the skills, definitely. And actually, if you look at it this way, you can see that yes, back in Victorian times, there was a one-size-fits-all education system. We decided what they needed to learn, how they're going to learn it, and we taught them. That's how it worked, largely. Being disingenuous to some people like Buckley and so on, but largely. And then we thought about, well, what about this idea of choice? What about this agency of students? And the kind of, maybe there's hundreds of ways of learning, maybe it's different. And come along the 60s. 60s had some amazing things happening in the UK, some really off-the-wall new ways of learning, and some really dodgy ones as well. But actually, we didn't have a way of evaluating which bits were good, which bits weren't. It was really creative, it was good, but actually, what about the evaluation of that? So it's kind of unevaluated. We then got into this idea of like personalising for groups. So if you were a teacher like maybe 20 years ago, every lesson had to be in 3 stages. Now, what were you doing for the upper of the group, the middle, and it was those that can do, should do, must do. We had differentiation arrived. And education in the UK, I'd say it is rare now to find a classroom that isn't differentiated. So we're at that stage where differentiation is there, sometimes with learning objectives, sometimes others. The question comes, well, where do you go next? Okay, we've dealt with that as an education system, so what's this personalisation mean? The problem is, there are 2 different, very different philosophies of personalisation. And I've called them the T route and P route. But actually one is, keeps the teacher in that position of control. It's the teacher route. And if you go down the teacher route, you've got to think, well, okay, at the moment I'm doing differentiation for 3 groups within my class. I've got to really go for 30, because that would be proper differentiation, wouldn't it? And we have this word that I hate called tailored learning, where the idea that this teacher is going to have 30 different lessons for 30 children. And it's that individualised learning, it's sometimes called, and we can use computers to help us do this, because they can all be sat on computers, and it's this idea that we get down to that individual. And I think I've not met a member of staff anywhere. Maybe a really, really good teacher, super teacher, can do maybe 5 lessons in their head at one go when they're doing it. But 30? It's not really, it's just adding guilt to what is already a conscientious profession. So I think trying to go down that route, I haven't found evidence of it working. I found lots of evidence of computer programmers and software providers thinking that's the way we're going and providing it. I've not found much evidence of it actually happening. The alternative route, and the route that I'd argue that most of the research, if you look at the research in this, what 80-90% of research is focused on, is looking at the P route. And that is peers being empowered to do this. Student-centred learning. So, in other words, the shift happens with the teacher from content to the skills required to do something with that content. So, it might be, we might have the initial idea of flipped learning was you get the content out of the way first, and the teacher concentrates on the skills that are needed by the children to analyse it, evaluate it, discuss it, consider it, look at, we more than ever need a generation of people who can work out what is fake news and what isn't, for example. So it's not the content on the web, it's what you do with it, it's how you understand it, how you work out what's good, what's bad. These are the skills that are critical. And actually, if we're looking at personalisation by the learner, then what we're doing is empowering a young person to use the wealth of education and tools and applications that are around in the world to actually continue their education well beyond the time that we've given them a stepping stone. So P route, I'd argue, is the way that we need to be working, but actually P route needs you to give ownership to the children. We shouldn't have software. One of the things I loved about Wand at the start is that actually I've caught children using it in the task we've set them to teach other children, because it doesn't matter whether they're a teacher or a pupil, they can do the whole set. And actually it's got that rare thing. If you look at, it's a good thing when going around BETT asks the software providers, can your software be used by a child who's pretending to be a teacher? I reckon you maybe find 1 or 2. I hope you find more than that. I mean, last year there was 2, and I can tell you who they are. But it's not going with the flow. The flow is actually you want them to be fully engaged in this process. And one of the best ways of teaching, or learning, is teaching someone else, isn't it? So actually, I mean, one of the projects I did was to actually do all children in the school, all children in a year group, teaching other children. So the lessons were them giving the content and them delivering it. And their success criteria was how many children in the class learnt what you were trying to teach. Really fabulous. I mean, the results of the school was in the top 100 in the country. So in terms of the quality of learning, it doesn't matter that actually you're not teaching them the content, you're actually teaching them the skills that they need to develop the content. If you're a teacher in the room and you think, actually there's a group of children, I don't mind about, revision kicks in and we're looking at the exams, I'm kind of calm about them, because I know they organise themselves, they've probably got a revision timetable, they've probably got scratch cards, they've got all those things sorted out. I'm worried about the ones that haven't got the skills. That's what I'm trying to work on. So actually, skills are front and foremost with us anyway. Okay? So that's the model I'm working to. Now, I'll probably set you up a little bit too much for the following question I'm going to ask you. Andrea Strike, I mean, the OECD agrees with us. That's always good when the OECD agrees with you, isn't it, actually? They're saying they're measuring things at the moment, but they really need to get away from measuring things and measuring skills. They've been struggling for years with how on earth you do this. And actually, I'd say, unless you involve the students deeply, there isn't really a solution. You just got to get past that thing about students as leaders being something that we're giving them, and actually seeing it as them some giving us the answer. So anyway, question for you now. Okay, so let's say what you think education is actually for. Okay, so imagine your own child or children that you know, and actually we've got schools that they go to, and they're only allowed to leave with 3 things that are improved. Okay, so they're only going to improve 3 things. The only thing we can guarantee the school, everything else may be bad, but we want 3 things that we definitely want them all to improve in. What would they be? Okay, have a think. Your own child comes out of school, what are they? Top 3. Are your 3 in this list by any chance? Okay, did we hit 2 or 3 of them? This is also, if you ask, when I did the international job, we went around different countries, different ministries, everything else, asked them the same question, collected all their answers together, and this is what we always got. Didn't matter what country it was, whether it was a business, whether it was a company, whether it was a CBI, whether it was head teachers, always the same. So we're all agreeing, which is really good news. Internationally, we're agreeing what the school should be for. Actually, what about if I pushed you more and I said, can't have all them, you're going to have 6. Because actually, if you go, this is looking too complicated, let's just go for 6. What would you go for, do you think? All right? Think about what's your top 6. So, top 6 we always got, from all of those settings we did, are these. All right? Added up, those are what people said education should be about the top 6. So, this is just sheerly adding up the numbers of those statements and trying to paraphrase them as best we possibly can. So, I was thinking, well, actually, schools aren't going to remember that. Children aren't going to remember that. It's a bit too wordy. How are we going to get that into an education plan? So I had to try and think of, okay, can I think of easier words for that actually children could work with? And it took a long time and a very big kitchen table to take all of the skills frameworks we could find from around the world, 54 of them, and try and cut them up and see how does it work, what kind of words can we use. And you might like what we've come up with, I don't know, but we came up with that, secret. Which kind of works because it's the secret to success, and it's this hidden bit of the curriculum that we're all not talking about, but it's kind of a secret. So, are they good at self-managing? Are they confident, resilient? Are they effective participation? Are they contributing to society effectively? Creative thinkers, problem-solving, entrepreneurial, reflective. They can learn independently. They can seek criticism. They can take criticism. They can build on that, set themselves target. They can weed out fake news. They can challenge bias, and also they can work collaboratively. So we've got that. It's the secret of education. And now you're changing and thinking, okay, every single lesson that we deliver, if these are so critical, and the world is telling us that this is what school is for, every single lesson we deliver has to contain a training in at least one of these, because otherwise we're selling them short. So we ripped out our teacher observation for across the schools, ripped it out, and put in this. So actually now, if you're being observed as a teacher, it's what are you doing to try and help the children become better self-managers in your lesson? You're teaching geography as well, and you're teaching the content, but we all know that I've never seen an outstanding lesson that hasn't got both. I've never seen an outstanding lesson that's just content. They don't tend to happen. It's about children, it's about the teacher's interaction with the children and knowing them and understanding them and building up as a person. If somebody's hamsters died the night before, it's a teacher who knows that and can actually give you a different set of what the challenges they would have given you to have that not happened. It's an interaction between people. So we're saying that actually the teachers, and I tried to get a word out of this, but there's a nasty C in there that means people don't think I can't spell. So we're kind of equipping, so the teachers are kind of equipping the students. It kind of works. Go with me on that. So the teachers should have high expectations. In other words, they're setting up the setting where they expect children to self-manage. Now, this may become apparent, this may not, but actually the students that I had to give you an indication of how hard we challenge them, the presentation of the work that they're doing today hasn't been scripted, hasn't been devised, has been from the heart from about 10 minutes before we came in. So that's a challenge, that's resilience, that's emotional, that's how do you get that? Because actually, you've seen the presentations where people have spent 8 weeks. It's good work, hard work, 8 weeks, scripting something and stand up and say, and change the PowerPoint. we're going to think what's the skills that they need. And actually, if they pull it off at the end of this, I mean, they're doing what most of us would be terrified of. Imagine you wake up right in the middle of the night thinking, okay, you've got 10 minutes to present to an international audience, what are you going to say? So no pressure, guys, but that's the kind of challenge. And actually, the reason why they're here is because they're the ones who need that challenge. They're not the children who are kind of well-spoken and they're what you are, most of you. They're not the children who have got, they're somebody's favourite. They're the children who actually have led student leadership programs and they're ready for the next challenge. So we've got 2 students here who organised the first ever MAT student conference, bringing students from the primaries and secondaries all together to run a conference. Content created by them, whole day created by them, to come up with ideas about how we should design our website. They ran it. We've got 4 people here who run the tech team, which is a program where children are running the implementation of laptops in the school. So the schools, they decide when students have them, they train the students, they manage the students, they make sure they're not on Facebook. They do all of those things, and it's a leadership challenge which they've been successful at. So they've not done this kind of challenge, but they're ready for the next challenge. And that's so you're kind of building a curriculum of opportunities, right? So a range of opportunities you can provide for them that builds these skills. And if we can't think of something that, if you've got a child who is incredibly good at something, and we can't think of an example of how we challenge them, that's us failing. If you do a review of a school and you find that all the levels of these skills are down at level 3, level 4, then we should be thinking, well, we're not providing this 21st century education. I don't care whether they're taught in rows of 30 or in Victorian old classrooms that look rather lovely. It doesn't matter to me. Are we delivering these is the key question that we need. And I think, because I'm winding up with time, I'll give you a brief just description of 2 of them. So, establishing self-management skills. The teacher presenting, fine, I'm presenting to you. I mean, it's personalised because you can leave. But I think that what's wrong with that, as a stimulus, is brilliant. It's really good. So, one of the things that, Wand has got those that we've been using, we're talking about today, has got that. We're then looking at trying to find ways of structuring that learning. When we did the student group, students wanted to use that kind of structure because they thought, well, how am I going to take primary and secondary children through this training? I know, I'll use something where I can move things around, interact, and they choose the tools that they use to do that. And just to close off, we need something that goes home with them because we need to do that. Teaching them self-direction happens at home as well, in that quiet space that they have, hopefully. And then obviously we need some feedback and quality data so that we can evaluate it. Because that's the key thing, that actually if I'm not evaluating, then I can say, oh, my children are happy, and this thing that's made me really excited, it's a brilliant project, did it work? Don't know. Unless we know, here are the skills that they had to start with, and here's the skills they have now, you're not going to know. Our school, every single child, in the MAT, every single child has their all of these 24 secret skills assessed, and actually so we can put intervention in place in those skills, specifically where there are gaps, rather than just, oh, it went well. Out there you will find, and I challenge you to find it, how long it takes you in BETT to find it, it's a supercomputer. Right, it's been developed, it's new this year, it's powerful enough to know personal strengths and weaknesses of all the children in the class, create opportunities for them, differentiate against their skills. It's amazing, right? It's called a human being. Just saying. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dan.